Welcome to Void of Fears, where the line between reality and nightmares blur with every tale. What you're about to hear has happened to someone, somewhere, perhaps even someone just like you. Our community continues to grow, and now we're reaching for 100,000 subscribers. If these glimpses into the unknown call to you, please consider subscribing. Now let's dive into tonight's story. Dr. Tom Mitchell was dead asleep when the universe changed forever. He had been dreaming of silence. Perfect, endless silence that stretched across the cosmos like a black velvet blanket, broken only by the gentle hum of distant pulsars. In his dream he floated among the stars, listening to their ancient songs, feeling peace for the first time in months. Then his phone exploded with a sound. Tom jolted awake in his cramped apartment, his heart hammering against his ribs as the emergency alert pierced through his sleep. The caller ID showed the Arecibo facility, and the timestamp read 11:47 p.m. No one called from the lab this late unless something catastrophic had happened. "Mitchell here," he answered, his voice thick with sleep. "Tom, thank God you picked up." Dr. Lisa Parker's voice trembled with an emotion he'd never heard from her before. Raw, unfiltered terror. "You need to get here now. Right now. Don't ask questions. Don't pack anything. Just get in your car and drive." "Lisa, what's wrong? Did something happen to the array?" "Tom," her voice dropped to a whisper, "we're not alone." The line went dead. Tom stared at his phone for 3 heartbeats, then grabbed his keys and ran. He drove through the storm-lashed night with his hands welded to the steering wheel, his mind racing through possibilities. Equipment failure, solar flare interference, some kind of atmospheric anomaly causing false readings. Anything except what Lisa's voice had suggested. But when he burst through the facility's main doors 20 minutes later, he found Dr. Lisa Parker sitting motionless at her workstation, her face pale as moonlight, staring at something on her screen with the wide-eyed expression of someone who had just watched the world end. "Lisa?" Tom approached slowly, as if she might startle and flee. "What did you find?" She turned toward him, and Tom saw that she'd been crying. Not just tears, deep, racking sobs that had left her eyes red, and her cheeks streaked with salt. "I've been listening to them die," she whispered. "For the past 4 hours, I've been listening to an entire civilization die, and they've been begging us to help them." Tom's blood turned to ice as Lisa gestured toward her monitor. Scrolling across the screen in endless, desperate repetition was a message that would haunt his dreams for the rest of his life. "Help us. Help us, please someone, help us, it comes. It feeds, it hunts. Help us, we are dying. Help us before it finds you too, help us, help us, help us." But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the timestamp showing when the signal had first been received. The message had been broadcasting for over 6 hours, repeating endlessly from a star system 4.2 light years away, and according to the signal analysis, whatever had sent it was no longer there. Lisa's words hung in the air like a death sentence. Tom approached her workstation slowly, his mind struggling to process what she had told him. An entire civilization dying while begging for help. The impossibility of it warred with the evidence, scrolling endlessly across her screen. "Start from the beginning," Tom said, pulling up a chair beside her. "Tell me everything." Lisa wiped her eyes with a trembling hand. "I came in early tonight. Dr. Miller asked me to run extended diagnostics on the array after yesterday's storm damage. I was working through Sector 7 when I picked up the first transmission at 7:23 p.m. She pulled up the original signal data, and Tom watched the waveform appear on her screen. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Complex, layered, with harmonics that suggested incredible sophistication. At first, I thought it was interference from a commercial satellite. The pattern was too regular to be natural, but the power levels seemed impossible for any known source. Then I ran it through the translation matrix. The computer had worked for nearly an hour, processing the alien data through thousands of potential linguistic protocols. When the first words appeared, Lisa had called 3 different colleagues to verify the translation. All 3 had confirmed the same terrifying result. The message started simple, Lisa continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Just help us, repeated over and over. But as the hours passed, it became more detailed, more desperate. Tom studied the signal analysis, noting the transmission's point of origin. Proxima Centauri, humanity's nearest stellar neighbour. The implications made his stomach clench with dread. Lisa, this signal has been travelling for over 4 years. Whatever sent it is describing events that happened when we were still debating whether exoplanets could support life. That's not the worst part. Lisa's fingers trembled as she pulled up additional data. The signal is getting stronger, not because of atmospheric conditions or equipment adjustments. It's getting stronger because the source is moving toward us. Tom felt the world tilt beneath him. That's impossible. Nothing can travel that fast through interstellar space. Tell that to whoever sent this message. Lisa highlighted a section of the signal analysis. Based on the rate of increase in signal strength, I calculate that whatever transmitted this warning will reach our solar system in approximately 60 hours. The facility suddenly felt very small and very isolated. Tom looked around at the familiar banks of equipment, the coffee-stained desks, the weather-beaten windows that had seemed so comforting just minutes earlier. Now they felt like the walls of a tomb. What else did they say? Tom asked, besides asking for help. Lisa's face crumpled as she pulled up the complete translation. They described what was hunting them. They called it the harvester, something that feeds on electromagnetic signals, on the radio waves that civilizations use to communicate. It follows transmissions across the galaxy, consuming entire worlds. Tom read through the alien message, his horror growing with each line. The beings who had sent this warning had documented their destroyer with scientific precision, even as their world died around them. They had described feeding appendages that drained energy from power grids, sensory organs that could detect radio transmissions from light years away, and a hunger that had consumed thousands of civilizations across millions of years. They knew they were going to die, Tom realized. They sent this message knowing it would attract the thing that was killing them. They sacrificed themselves to warn us. And now we're next. Lisa's voice broke completely. Every radio station, every television broadcast, every satellite signal we've sent into space for the past century has been announcing our location to something that sees civilizations as food. Tom stood up abruptly, pacing to the window where rain continued to hammer against the glass. Beyond the storm, invisible radio waves poured from Earth's surface into space, carrying sitcoms and news broadcasts and internet data to any listener patient enough to receive them. For the first time in his life, the thought of human communication, filling the cosmos with noise, terrified him. "We need to call Dr. Miller," he said finally. "I already tried. She's not answering her phone." Tom pulled out his cell phone and dialed their supervisor's number. It rang 6 times before going to voicemail. He tried again with the same result. "What about NASA, the European Space Agency? And tell them what?" Lisa laughed bitterly. "That we received a distress call from aliens, warning us about a cosmic predator that's coming to eat our planet. They'll think we've lost our minds." Tom knew she was right, but they had to try. "We document everything, every piece of data, every translation, every analysis. We build a case so compelling that they have to listen." For the next 2 hours, Tom and Lisa worked with desperate efficiency. They recorded the alien signal from multiple receivers, ran it through every translation program the facility possessed, and documented the mathematical impossibility of its increasing strength. Tom called contacts at observatories around the world, asking them to monitor the space around Proxima Centauri for any unusual activity. Most dismissed his requests politely. A few agreed to take a quick look when their schedules permitted. None of them understood the urgency. At 2:15 a.m., the signal changed. Tom was reviewing translation data when Lisa's sharp intake of breath made him look up. The scrolling message on her screen had altered, new words appearing among the familiar pleas for help. "It comes for you now. The signal's call to it. Silence your voices, or join us in darkness." "They're still alive," Lisa whispered. "Some of them are still alive, and they're trying to warn us specifically." Tom felt ice water replace the blood in his veins. The transmission was no longer a recording. It was a live communication from beings facing extinction, reaching across impossible distances to deliver a final warning to the next victims. "We have to wake Dr. Miller," Tom said, reaching for the phone. "Wait." Lisa grabbed his arm. "Look at this." She'd been analyzing the signal's carrier wave, the underlying frequency that transported the alien message across space. Embedded within it were additional data streams, star charts, energy signatures, and what appeared to be a catalogue of dead civilizations. "They're sending us everything they know," Lisa realized. "Their entire database of encounters with this thing. Hundreds of worlds, Tom. Maybe thousands. All gone silent after receiving similar warnings." Tom studied the star charts, recognizing constellations from Earth's perspective. Each marked system had once harbored intelligent life. Each had sent out radio signals into space, advertising their presence to the cosmos. And each had been consumed by something that used their own communications against them. "We're looking at a galactic graveyard," Tom said quietly. The storm outside seemed to intensify, as if nature itself sensed the approaching doom. Tom and Lisa continued their work in silence, documenting humanity's first and possibly last contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. Every few minutes, the alien transmission would update with new information, technical specifications for the approaching entity, descriptions of its feeding process, and increasingly desperate pleas for Earth to somehow break the cycle of death that had consumed so many worlds. At 3:30 a.m., Dr. Janet Miller finally answered her phone. Tom spent the next few hours reviewing equipment logs and updating star charts. The work was methodical, almost meditative. Outside, the storm raged with increasing violence, sending sheets of rain against the windows and causing occasional power fluctuations throughout the facility. He was accustomed to such interruptions. The backup generators would kick in if needed, and the sensitive equipment was well protected against electrical surges. At 11:30, he decided to run a full spectrum sweep of the listening array, a routine procedure that would help identify any weather-related interference. The computers hummed as they processed signals from across the electromagnetic spectrum, filtering out known sources and flagging anything unusual for further analysis. That's when the displays began showing something impossible. A signal was coming through Sector 7, the same area Lisa had mentioned, but this wasn't weather interference or equipment malfunction. The signal was artificial, structured, and impossibly powerful. Tom's hands moved across the controls with practiced efficiency, isolating the frequency and enhancing the signal strength. The numbers on his screen defied comprehension. The signal's power output suggested a transmission source with technology centuries beyond anything humanity possessed. The origin point made his blood freeze in his veins. Proxima Centauri, the nearest star system to Earth. Tom's mouth went dry as he realized what he was seeing. This wasn't just any signal. This was proof that humanity was not alone in the universe, and whatever had sent this message wanted desperately to communicate. That's when he put on the headphones and heard the screaming. The sound defied description. It was anguish given form, terror made audible, the last desperate cry of something facing annihilation. But buried within that horrible shriek was a structure, pattern, intelligence. Tom forced himself to listen, his hands shaking, as he adjusted the filters and ran the signal through the facility's most sophisticated analysis programs. The screaming faded, replaced by a rhythmic pulse that repeated every 73 seconds with mechanical precision. Binary code emerged from the chaos like a message in a bottle, washing up on a digital shore. Tom fed the data into the translation matrix, a program designed to detect patterns in extraterrestrial communications. The computer worked for several minutes, processing the alien data through thousands of potential translation protocols. The result appeared on his screen in stark white letters that seemed to burn into his retinas. "Help us, help us, help us. The hunter comes, the hunter feeds. Help us, please. Someone, anyone help us. It follows the signals. It follows. The calls help us before it finds you, too. Help us." Tom stared at the message until his eyes watered, reading it again and again, each repetition driving the terrible reality deeper into his consciousness. This wasn't first contact. This was a death sentence. His hands trembled as he reached for the phone, dialing Dr. Janet Miller's number. The facility director answered on the fourth ring, her voice thick with sleep and irritation. "Tom, do you have any idea what time it is? This better be a genuine emergency." "Dr. Miller, Lisa and I have been monitoring a signal from Proxima Centauri for the past 8 hours. It's not equipment malfunction. We have first contact and the message is, it's a warning about something coming to kill us." The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that Tom wondered if the call had dropped. When Dr. Miller finally spoke, her voice was carefully controlled, the tone she used when dealing with researchers who had spent too many hours staring at data. "Tom, I need you and Lisa to step away from the equipment immediately. You're both experiencing what we call pattern recognition fatigue. When you stare at signals long enough, your brain starts manufacturing meaning where none exists." "Dr. Miller, we've run every verification protocol in the book. The translation has been confirmed by 3 independent programs. The signal is artificial, it's from an extraterrestrial source, and it's warning us about something called the Harvester that hunts civilizations across the galaxy." Lisa leaned toward the phone. "Dr. Miller, this is Lisa Parker. I know how this sounds, but you need to see the data. The signal strength is increasing exponentially, suggesting the source is moving toward Earth at impossible speeds. Based on our calculations, it will arrive in our solar system within 60 hours. Another long pause. Tom could hear Dr. Miller moving around her apartment, probably getting dressed. He knew her well enough to recognize the signs of someone whose scientific curiosity had overcome their initial skepticism. "Have either of you contacted anyone else about this?" "I made some discreet inquiries to colleagues at other observatories," Tom admitted. "Asked them to monitor the Proxima Centauri system for unusual activity. And most thought I was chasing equipment ghosts. A few agreed to take a look when their schedules permit." Dr. Miller's sigh came through clearly over the phone. "I'll be there in 40 minutes. Don't contact anyone else until I've reviewed your data personally. If this is what you think it is, we need to be very careful about how we proceed." The line went dead, leaving Tom and Lisa alone with their terrible discovery. They spent the next half hour organizing their documentation, preparing to present the most important and horrifying scientific finding in human history. When Dr. Miller arrived, her usually pristine appearance showed signs of hasty dressing. Her greying hair was slightly disheveled, and she wore mismatched shoes, details that would have been amusing under any other circumstances. "Show me everything," she said without preamble. For the next hour, Tom and Lisa walked their supervisor through their analysis. They played the original signal, demonstrated the translation process, and showed her the embedded star charts that catalogued dead civilizations across the galaxy. Dr. Miller listened in increasingly tense silence, her scientific skepticism gradually giving way to horrified acceptance. "The power requirements for this transmission are staggering," she finally said, studying the signal strength analysis. We're looking at technology that can focus electromagnetic energy across interstellar distances with no apparent degradation. And it's getting stronger, Lisa added. The source is definitely approaching our solar system. Dr. Miller pulled up the facility's secure communication system. I'm calling Dr. Paul Johnson and Dr. Amy Davis. If we're dealing with genuine extraterrestrial contact, we need our best linguist and astrophysicist here immediately. At 4 a.m, Tom asked. Tom, if your analysis is correct, we may have less than 3 days before humanity faces an extinction-level threat. Sleep can wait. Dr. Johnson arrived first, his usually careful appearance replaced by hastily thrown-on clothes and sleep-disheveled hair. Dr. Amy Davis followed 20 minutes later, carrying a travel mug of coffee and wearing the expression of someone who had been rudely awakened from deep sleep. This better be worth losing a night's sleep, she muttered, then stopped short when she saw the alien message scrolling across Lisa's monitor. Is that what I think it is? Depends what you think it is, Dr. Miller replied grimly. Tom, start from the beginning. For the third time that night, Tom explained their discovery. Dr. Johnson and Dr. Davis listened with the focused attention of scientists presented with data that challenged everything they thought they knew about the universe. Dr. Johnson took over the linguistic analysis, running the alien message through every translation protocol the facility possessed. His expertise confirmed what Tom and Lisa had already determined. The message was genuine, sophisticated, and terrifying in its implications. The grammar structure suggests multiple contributors, Johnson reported. This isn't a message from a single individual. It's a collaborative effort from what appears to be an entire scientific community. Dr. Davis focused on the astrophysical implications, analyzing the signal's origin point and movement patterns. Her calculations confirmed the impossible. Something was traveling from Proxima Centauri toward Earth at speeds that defied known physics. If this entity is moving as fast as the signal strength suggests, it's traveling at roughly 10% of light speed, she announced. That's beyond anything we thought possible for objects of significant mass. How significant? Dr. Miller asked. Dr. Davis ran additional calculations, factoring in the gravitational effects that such a massive object would have on surrounding space. Based on the signal's characteristics and the entity's apparent ability to focus electromagnetic energy, I estimate we're dealing with something at least 200 kilometers in diameter. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They were facing something vast and utterly alien. A cosmic predator that had been hunting civilizations for millions of years. What do we do? Lisa asked quietly. We gather more data, Dr. Miller replied. We contact our colleagues at NASA, ESA, and other space agencies. We prepare a presentation that will convince world leaders to take this threat seriously. And if they don't believe us? Tom asked. Dr. Miller looked around the room at her team, dedicated scientists who had stumbled upon humanity's first contact with extraterrestrial intelligence and discovered it was a death sentence. Then we pray that whoever sent this warning was wrong about what's coming for us. Thursday brought a flurry of activity as the team worked to expand their analysis and reach out to the global scientific community. Dr. Davis contacted colleagues at major observatories, asking them to focus their instruments on the outer solar system. Dr. Johnson continued analyzing the alien message, uncovering additional layers of data that painted an increasingly detailed picture of the approaching threat. The entity's feeding process was described in clinical detail by beings who had studied their destroyer even as their world died around them. The creature consumed electromagnetic energy in all its forms: radio waves, electrical fields, even the bioelectric activity of living brains. Victims remained conscious during the feeding process, aware but paralyzed as their neural activity was slowly drained away. It's not just killing them, Johnson reported during their morning briefing. It's absorbing their consciousness, their memories, their knowledge. Every civilization it consumes makes it more intelligent and more dangerous. Dr. Davis had begun receiving responses from her astronomical contacts. The reports were disturbing but not yet definitive. Several observatories had detected gravitational anomalies in the outer solar system, but nothing that couldn't be explained by normal celestial mechanics. "Give it another day," she predicted. "If this thing is as large as we think, it will become impossible to ignore once it enters the inner solar system." Dr. Miller spent the day on secure communications with government contacts, attempting to alert them to the potential threat without sounding like a delusional scientist. The responses were predictably skeptical, but she managed to arrange a video conference with NASA administrators for Friday morning. Thursday evening brought the first visual confirmation of their fears. The Hubble Space Telescope, hastily redirected from its scheduled observations, captured images of the outer solar system that defied easy interpretation. Something was moving between the orbits of Neptune and Pluto, something that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "It's partially visible in infrared," Dr. Davis reported, enhancing the telescope images. "The thermal signature suggests something organic, but with artificial components integrated into its structure." Tom stared at the blurry images, trying to comprehend the scale of what they were facing. The entity appeared to be a hybrid of biology and technology, its surface covered in what looked like massive sensory organs, designed to detect electromagnetic signals across vast distances. "It's been hunting for millions of years," he realized, "learning, adapting, evolving. Every civilization it consumes teaches it new ways to hunt the next one." The alien transmission had evolved throughout the day, providing increasingly detailed information about the entity's capabilities and weaknesses. The beings who had originally sent the warning had clearly been advanced scientists, documenting their destroyer with the same methodical precision that human researchers might use to study a dangerous new species. "They found something," Dr. Johnson announced during their evening analysis session, "a potential weakness. The entity's feeding process can be disrupted by focused electromagnetic pulses of sufficient intensity." "What kind of intensity?" Dr. Miller asked. Johnson consulted his translation notes. "According to their calculations, it would require the coordinated output of every radio transmitter on their planet, focused into a single pulse." "Did it work?" Lisa asked. Johnson's expression darkened. "They never got the chance to try. The entity consumed their power grid before they could implement the plan." Friday morning brought humanity's first official acknowledgement of the threat. Dr. Miller's video conference with NASA administrators had gone better than expected, largely because astronomical observatories around the world were now reporting undeniable evidence of something massive approaching Earth. Dr. Davis coordinated with facilities globally, gathering data from every functioning telescope on and around the planet. The pictures that emerged painted a terrifying portrait of humanity's first alien visitor. He stared at the phone, then back at his monitor, where the desperate plea scrolled endlessly across the screen. Sleep was impossible. Tom spent the remainder of the night documenting everything: signal strength, frequency modulation, origin coordinates, and most importantly, the complete translation of the alien message. As dawn approached, he noticed something that made his blood turn to ice water in his veins. The signal was getting stronger. Not gradually, not slowly. With each repetition, the transmission's power increased exponentially, as if its source was racing toward Earth at impossible speeds. Tom ran calculations, cross-referencing the signal strength with known physics, and arrived at a conclusion that defied everything he understood about interstellar travel. Whatever had sent the message was moving, fast, and it was coming their way. But that wasn't the worst part. As Tom analysed the signal's structure throughout the night, he began to detect subtle variations in the transmission. The basic message remained the same, but additional data was being embedded within the carrier wave: coordinates, star charts, a map of the galaxy showing the locations of worlds that had once harboured intelligent life. Every marked world was dead now, consumed, emptied of all electromagnetic activity, and Earth's coordinates had just been added to the list. Thursday morning brought vindication and terror in equal measure. Dr. Miller arrived at the facility with Dr. Paul Johnson, the linguistics expert who had helped develop their translation protocols, and Dr. Amy Davis, whose work in astrophysics had earned her international recognition. Tom had spent the sleepless night preparing his documentation, creating a presentation that would convince even the most skeptical scientists that humanity faced an unprecedented crisis. The secure research lab felt cramped with 4 people crowded around the analysis stations. Tom played back the previous night's recordings, watching his colleagues' faces transform from polite skepticism to genuine concern to barely controlled panic. "The transmission is definitely artificial," Dr. Davis confirmed, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "The power requirements for a signal this strong across interstellar distances would require technology far beyond our current capabilities. We're looking at a civilization that has mastered energy sources we can barely theorize about." Dr. Johnson leaned over his workstation, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he ran linguistic analysis on the alien message. "The translation is accurate. The grammatical structure suggests desperation, urgency, but there's more data here than just the primary message." Tom felt the familiar chill as Johnson's analysis revealed the embedded information he had discovered during the night. Star charts appeared on the screen, showing the galaxy from an alien perspective. Dozens of star systems were marked with symbols that pulsed red against the cosmic backdrop. "These are stellar coordinates," Dr. Davis whispered, her face pale. "Each one represents a star system with planets in the habitable zone. But look at the energy readings." She manipulated the display, showing electromagnetic signatures for each marked system. The readings were identical. 0 activity, no radio transmissions, no industrial emissions, no signs of technological civilization. "They're all dead," Tom said quietly, "every world that received the warning signal." Dr. Johnson continued his analysis, uncovering additional layers of data within the transmission. "There's a countdown sequence embedded in the signal. The numerical system is alien, but the pattern is clear. It's decreasing at a steady rate." "How much time do we have?" Dr. Miller asked, her authority mask slipping to reveal genuine fear. Dr. Davis ran rapid calculations, factoring in the signal's increasing strength and rate of approach. "Based on current data, I estimate the signal's source will reach our solar system in approximately 68 hours. The room fell silent except for the hum of computers and the steady patter of rain against the windows. Tom watched his colleagues process the implications, seeing his own horror reflected in their faces. "What exactly are we dealing with?" Dr. Miller asked. Tom pulled up the complete translation on the main display. According to the message, it's called the Hunter. The aliens who sent this warning described it as something that feeds on electromagnetic signatures. It follows radio transmissions across the galaxy, consuming entire civilizations. Dr. Johnson ran his hands through his hair, leaving it disheveled. "But why send a warning if it only helps the entity track more victims?" "Because they were dying," Tom replied. "These beings, whoever they were, spent their final moments trying to warn others. They knew their transmission would lead the Hunter to other worlds, but they couldn't let other civilizations face this thing without warning." Dr. Davis pulled up astronomical data from observatories around the world. "If this entity is as large and powerful as the signal suggests, we should be able to detect it as it enters our solar system. I'm contacting colleagues at NASA, ESA, and the Chinese National Space Administration. We need every telescope pointed at the outer system." "What if the government decides to suppress this information?" Dr. Miller asked. "Then we all die in ignorance instead of terror," Tom replied grimly. "But at least we'll know what's coming." That afternoon brought developments that confirmed their worst fears. Dr. Davis's contacts at major observatories began reporting unusual readings from the outer solar system. Nothing definitive yet, but several facilities had detected gravitational anomalies near the Kuiper Belt. Dr. Johnson spent hours analyzing additional components of the alien transmission, uncovering fragments of what appeared to be historical records. The data painted a terrifying picture of the hunter's capabilities and feeding patterns. "It's been active for millions of years," Johnson reported during their evening briefing. "The transmission contains references to entire galactic sectors being systematically harvested. This thing doesn't just destroy individual worlds, it consumes all electromagnetic activity within light years of its position." Tom studied the historical data, noting patterns in the hunter's movement across the galaxy. It follows a specific route, moving from one spiral arm to another. Based on these records, it hasn't been active in our region of space for over 60,000 years. "What changed?" Dr. Miller asked. "We did," Dr. Davis replied quietly. "Humanity's radio transmissions over the past century have been broadcasting our presence across interstellar space. We've been sending a dinner invitation to something that feeds on civilizations." The implications were staggering. Every radio broadcast, every television transmission, every satellite signal had been announcing humanity's location to something vast and hungry, lurking in the depths of space. Thursday night brought the first visual confirmation of their fears. The Hubble Space Telescope, redirected from its scheduled observations, captured images of the outer solar system that defied comprehension. Something massive was moving between the orbits of Neptune and Pluto, something that didn't reflect light so much as absorb it. Dr. Davis worked through the night with her astronomical colleagues, gathering data from every functioning telescope on and around Earth. The pictures that emerged were blurry, distorted by distance and the entity's apparent ability to bend electromagnetic radiation around itself. "It's approximately 200 kilometers in diameter," Davis reported during Friday's emergency meeting, "but that may just be its visible portion. The gravitational effect suggests something much larger." Tom stared at the grainy images on their screens, trying to comprehend the scale of what they were facing. The entity appeared organic, its surface covered in what looked like massive sensory organs or feeding apparatus. Occasionally bursts of energy erupted from its form, reaching out like tendrils to sample the electromagnetic environment. "It's tasting us," Tom realized, "sampling our radio signatures, learning about our technology and population centers." "The signal has changed again," Dr. Johnson announced, his voice hollow with exhaustion and fear. The linguist had been monitoring the alien transmission continuously, documenting every variation in its content. The primary message had evolved beyond simple warnings. Now it contained detailed information about the hunter's feeding process, transmitted by beings who had studied the entity during their final days. The descriptions were horrifying in their clinical precision. "It doesn't just kill," Johnson read from the latest translation. "It absorbs every radio wave, every electrical impulse, every thought generated by electromagnetic activity in the brain. The victims remain conscious during the feeding process, aware but unable to act as their neural activity is consumed." Dr. Miller had grown increasingly pale throughout the week, the weight of leadership during humanity's first existential crisis taking its toll. "What about evacuation? Can we get people away from major population centers?" "Where would they go?" Tom asked. "This thing feeds on electromagnetic activity. Every city, every power grid, every electronic device is a beacon calling it forward. We can't hide 6 billion people in caves." Dr. Davis had been running calculations on her computer, modeling various scenarios for humanity's survival. There might be another option. If we could overload the entity somehow, create an electromagnetic pulse powerful enough to damage its feeding apparatus. "How?" Dr. Miller asked. "Every radio telescope on Earth, every broadcasting station, every satellite transmitter, If we could synchronize them all into a single focused transmission. Tom understood immediately. It would be like feeding a massive electrical surge into something designed to consume normal amounts of energy, but the feedback would destroy most of our communication infrastructure. Better than being consumed alive, Johnson muttered. Friday evening brought the entity into the inner solar system. Observatories tracked its passage as it moved past Jupiter, and the gas giant's electromagnetic field began fluctuating wildly. The entity was feeding, absorbing the massive planet's radio emissions and growing larger. It's accelerating, Dr. Davis reported. Now that it's feeding actively, its approach speed is increasing exponentially. Tom watched the tracking data with growing dread. At its current rate, the entity would reach Earth's orbit within 36 hours. They were running out of time to implement any defensive measures. The alien transmission had evolved again, now providing detailed technical specifications for the entity's construction and capabilities. The beings who had originally sent the warning had clearly been advanced scientists documenting their destroyer with the same, though methodical precision that human researchers might use to study a new species. It's not entirely organic, Johnson reported. The core appears to be some kind of artificial construct, but it's grown a biological shell over millions of years of feeding. The original builders are long extinct, but their creation continues to consume everything in its path. A weapon that outlived its creators, Tom mused. But why is it still active after all this time? Dr. Davis pulled up energy readings from the entity's current position. Because it's become self-sustaining, every civilization it consumes provides the energy needed to continue hunting. It's a perfect predator, one that grows stronger with each victim. Saturday morning brought mass communications failures across Earth. Satellites began going offline in systematic patterns, their signals absorbed by the approaching entity. Television broadcasts flickered and died. Internet connections became sporadic. The hunter was feeding on humanity's electronic infrastructure before it even arrived. Tom stood in the facility's main control room, surrounded by banks of equipment that represented humanity's best hope for survival. Dr. Davis had spent the night coordinating with facilities around the world, preparing for a synchronized transmission that would hopefully drive the entity away. Every major radio telescope is online, she reported. Broadcasting stations across 6 continents are ready to participate. The timing has to be perfect, or the feedback will destroy our equipment without affecting the target. Dr. Johnson continued monitoring the alien transmission, which had become increasingly fragmented as the entity approached. The original senders are dead, he announced quietly. This is a recording now, an automated system, broadcasting their final message until the hunter consumes the last of their technology. Tom felt a profound sadness for the unknown beings who had spent their final days trying to warn others. Their sacrifice had given humanity a chance, however small, to survive what was coming. The entity is entering Earth's orbital space, Dr. Davis announced, her voice steady, despite the magnitude of the moment. All stations report ready for synchronized transmission. Tom looked around the control room at his colleagues, these dedicated scientists who had worked tirelessly to give humanity a fighting chance. Dr. Miller stood by the emergency controls, ready to evacuate the facility if their plan failed. Dr. Johnson continued monitoring communications, documenting humanity's first and possibly last contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. Dr. Davis maintained coordination with facilities worldwide, her expertise holding together their desperate defense. Tom, Dr. Miller said quietly, someone needs to stay and manually control the transmission array. The automated systems won't be able to adjust for the entity's movements or compensate for equipment failures. Tom nodded, understanding the implications. Whoever stayed would be at ground zero when every radio transmitter on Earth focused its energy into a single devastating pulse. The feedback would likely destroy the facility and anyone inside it. "I'll do it," he said simply. Dr. Davis looked up from her controls, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Tom, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." Tom moved to the primary transmission controls, familiarizing himself with the manual overrides. "I was the first person to receive their message. It's appropriate that I be the one to send our response." The others began evacuating, taking with them all the data they had gathered during their brief but intensive study of humanity's first alien contact. If Tom's sacrifice failed, at least future generations would understand what had destroyed their world. Alone in the control room, Tom watched his monitors as the entity approached Earth. Through the facility's external cameras, he caught glimpses of something vast and terrible, blotting out the stars. The hunter had arrived. "All stations, this is Arecibo Control." Tom spoke into his headset, his voice reaching radio operators around the world. "Prepare for synchronized transmission on my mark." The entity filled the sky now, its organic surface pulsing with absorbed energy. Tom could see massive sensory organs focusing on Earth's surface, preparing to begin the feeding process that would drain all life from the planet. "All stations, transmit now." Tom engaged the manual controls, channeling every watt of power the facility could generate into the transmission array. Around the world, radio telescopes and broadcasting stations followed suit, creating a focused beam of electromagnetic energy aimed directly at the approaching entity. The effect was immediate and devastating. The hunter recoiled as if struck, its feeding apparatus disrupting under the assault of concentrated energy. For a moment, Tom thought they had killed it. Then the entity began to adapt, its organic shell reconfiguring to handle the increased energy input. It was learning, evolving, preparing to absorb their desperate attack and use it to fuel its own growth. But Tom had one final card to play. As the feedback from the overloaded transmission systems began destroying equipment around the world, he activated a secondary protocol that he had programmed during the long night hours. A message began broadcasting on a different frequency, one that wouldn't interfere with their defensive pulse. The message was simple, containing just 4 words and a set of galactic coordinates. "Help us. Hunter comes." Tom's final transmission raced toward distant stars, carrying with it a warning for other civilizations and the coordinates of every inhabited world in their local galactic region. He had become the very thing he had feared, the latest link in a chain of warnings that led the hunter from one world to another. But as the entity above writhed under the assault of Earth's concentrated electromagnetic output, Tom realized their sacrifice might have accomplished something unprecedented. The hunter was retreating, its feeding process disrupted by the coordinated attack. Not destroyed, but driven away, forced to seek easier prey elsewhere in the galaxy. The control room filled with smoke and sparks as the overloaded equipment began failing catastrophically. Tom remained at his post, manually adjusting the transmission until the last possible moment, ensuring maximum effect against humanity's destroyer. As consciousness faded, Tom's final thought was of the unknown beings who had sent the original warning. They had died trying to save others, and now he had done the same. The cycle would continue, spreading across the galaxy like a virus of hope and terror, but humanity would survive to join that desperate chain of warnings. Earth's coordinated electromagnetic pulse succeeded beyond their most optimistic projections. The hunter, faced with an unprecedented defensive response, withdrew from Earth's orbit and retreated toward the outer solar system. The entity had been damaged, its feeding apparatus disrupted, and it would require time to repair itself before attempting another assault. Humanity had won its first victory against an alien aggressor, but the cost had been enormous. Communication systems worldwide lay in ruins, satellite networks were destroyed, and technological civilization had been set back decades. 6 months later, Dr. Janet Miller sat alone in the rebuilt Arecibo facility, monitoring the weak signals that still reached Earth through their damaged but functional equipment. She had overseen the facility's reconstruction, ensuring that humanity maintained its ability to listen to the cosmos, despite the devastating losses they had suffered. The Hunter had not returned, but telescopic observations suggested it had moved on to other star systems, continuing its ancient pattern of consumption. Earth had bought itself time, nothing more. A faint signal caught Miller's attention, originating from the direction of the Vega system. She enhanced it through their remaining filters, cleaned up the static and ran it through their rebuilt translation programs. The result appeared on her screen in familiar white letters. "Help us. Hunter comes." Dr. Miller stared at the message, understanding exactly what it meant. Tom's final transmission had reached another world, and now they were sending out their own desperate warning. The cycle was continuing, spreading from star to star like ripples in a cosmic pond. She reached for the power controls and shut down the receiver. Some messages were too dangerous to hear. Some warnings only served to spread the very danger they sought to prevent. Walking away from the console, Dr. Miller activated the facility's destruction protocols. The remaining equipment would be destroyed, the data wiped, and the facility abandoned. Humanity would rebuild its communication networks, but this time they would be more careful about what they broadcast into the void. The stars continued their ancient dance overhead, beautiful and terrible in their silence. Somewhere among them, an entity older than human civilization continued its endless hunt, following a trail of warnings and desperate pleas across the galaxy. And in the depths of space, Tom Mitchell's final message raced toward distant worlds, carrying with it both hope and doom for civilizations not yet born. The warning would save some and condemn others, but it would ensure that no world would face the Hunter without knowing what was coming. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but some knowledge came at too high a price. Some calls for help were traps, and some warnings were invitations to horrors beyond imagination. But in the end, consciousness was better than ignorance, and a fighting chance was better than helpless extinction. The chain of warnings would continue, linking civilizations across time and space in a desperate network of shared knowledge and mutual protection. The Hunter was patient, but so was hope. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, both continued their eternal dance.